To start off where we left off on the last video is we are looking at now building the other wall type. We did the CP4 and modified it, and so now we want to go here into the CP1. So what I have done here is I have basically duplicated the CP4 and I called it CP1. You'll see that I have some of the very similar outside exterior materials, but I have made a metal stud layer which is 6 inches, and then I have a gypsum wall board on the interior of the core that is 5/8. And so if we look at that wall type, as we see here in the CP1, we have the steel studs, and then we have the sheetrock on the interior. Now what we're going to do is we need to add a kind of wood sheathing on the outside, which is 3/4. Then we add the vapor barrier, and then we're going to add another inch of airspace out here before we go to the 5/8 material. So this is a little different configuration than what we had over here, because the insulation is inside the wall as opposed to attached to the outside. So we have we need to kind of modify the wall section to match. So here we've got, here in this particular case, we're going to move the membrane layer out. Our substrate is not going to be rigid insulation. We need to change that to plywood. So we got plywood sheathing. Say OK. Now, this is not 1.5 inches. This is only 3/4 of an inch. And now we're going to go up here. So we've got the sheathing, the vapor retarder as before, and then now we have a larger airspace of 1 inch. And make sure there's no 0 in front of the inch. Sometimes you do that and it will give you an error message. Only have a 0 if you've got a 5/8 or 3/4 or any type of less than 1 inch definition. So we will say OK and apply. We open up, and so now we have a CP1 wall and a CP4, and then of course our CP2, which are outside of our elevator or stair tower and stair tower here. And we now can start to add those walls around the corner. So I'm going to go back here to the plan level. So I have stacked these up. One of the things that we did in class, and I'll just kind of go through it real quickly. So this CP4 wall will come around the corner. So I'm going to grab that reference or that wall. So we'll go back up here to wall. Go back to CP4. There it is. And that's got a W12, so that is. And then we're going to reference. Now we know that these walls are 1 foot 6 inches off. One of the other things is I know is that if I go counterclockwise, if I go this way, the exterior material is facing in. So we don't want that. We want it to be the other way around. So we're going to say undo that. The other thing is I want to take a look at is we have this set up. Now I had drawn in this wall before. So what I need to do is make sure that this is connected to base constraint level 1. And we're going to make that 0. And we know that it's not going to connect up to level 2 because it's a short wall. It's going to be unconnected, and that's the 2 foot 10 inches. And so now I'm going to draw this in, and if you look at the wall section, this one is also 2 foot 10 inches, and that's 0. And so if we go back to the wall section just to give you an understanding of what's going on. Let me zoom out here for a second. So over here we have some unique wall conditions that are being highlighted. So this is the wall that we're drawing. So here again, we know that grade first floor levels at 100, so we know that if we minus that, we got 2 foot 10 inches, and that's where that stops. And then the CP1 wall, which we just talked about, sits on top of that. So that helps us know how tall that wall is when we install it. So if we go back to here, back to our walls, we have the CP4. So I'm going to go counterclockwise. And we have the 1 foot 6. And we can draw it over to this grid line. And one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to modify. So once you put it in and you have it in the right location, I can kind of drag it over and they will connect. So now these are connected. The one thing as I looked on the plan, the structural plan, it gave me the length of that particular wall. So if we go over here and we look at the structural plan, you can see here that they show that short concrete wall at 22 feet. So now we know to go back and we can make this 22 feet. And that one should be the correct length. So if we do a quick 3D view, I'm going to go back to this corner. Now we have this wall identified in the plan, so we have the lower wall, and now we're going to add the CP1 wall on top. So there again, let's go back to our level 1 as-built. And we're going to change this back to the CP1 that we had drawn. And here again, we're going to also do this to the core face. And as we talked about in class, the reason why we're doing the core face is if for some reason you change that but you still want the outside materials to be in the same plane, so you might change the structural wall, we want to make sure that this this reference to how the line is drawn in is the same for all the different walls, even the stacked ones. So core face of exterior. Now we're going to change. Our base constraint is level 1, but now we're going to draw on top of the other one, so that needs to be 2 foot 10 inches, so that we're drawing on top of the wall. The top constraint now is up to level 2, and so it tells us that we're going to draw a wall that's 8 foot 10. So if I come over here, there again, I want to make sure I'm drawing, referencing off that grid line. There we go, 1 foot 6. Now I can do the same thing for drawing on top of the wall. And we are going to do that again. So sometimes you have to kind of come in here and you have that little dimension at the bottom showing 7 inches. You can actually type in that dimension so that you know that you're on top or referencing the same line. So we'll put that there. Now I've got a little bit of gap between, so I'm going to get these two walls to work with each other. So I'm going to drag that one down, and I'm going to drag this one back. So now they will intersect each other and make a square corner. So if we go back to the 3D view, you can see that these are both now in the same plane. Now this particular wall looks like it's not in the same plane with this, so let's take a look. It's a CP4 wall. So it looks like maybe something is drawn out of sequence with each other. So I'm going to go back to the plan and see if I can identify what that is. So now we've got these walls together. There's a line here, and I'll have to go back and investigate what's causing it, but for right now we're just going to kind of move forward. The other thing you'll look on the plan, you'll notice that that low wall also goes between this column and this column, and then turns up and then becomes another, they've changed the interior wall type from a kind of a W12 to a W13, which is basically still an 8-inch block, but there is some structural modification. So if you want to make that wall type, you could change it coming up to here. But for right now, I am just going to use this to do the same thing again with the wall. And go back to the CP4 with the W12. And I'm going to make that wall continue. So since I didn't want to, I'm going to now notice that here I actually have built it to the height of the other one, so I need to go back and I need to change this one to 0 again and change it from going up to the second level, being unconnected, and this would be 2 foot 10. And so you'll see that as you go through, whatever settings that you had last will be the settings that you need to reference. I'm going to drag this across. And I know that this is supposed to line up with the column. Excuse me. So what that means is then oh, I see. The other thing that I also did that'll offset this a little bit is I had actually inserted this with finish face. So if I were to change that to core face exterior, now I need to modify this out because now my dimension should be 1 foot 6 to that location, and right now I'm showing a smaller dimension from here to this wall. So I could either just delete it and redraw that, which might be the easiest way to do that. And then there again, I would just go back up to my wall, CP4, finish face of core. I am going to make my base offset to 0, and I am going to make this 2 foot 10 again. There we go. Do modify. And then bring it back to here. Now notice that my wall is still showing up to level 2. I need to do that as unconnected. And now it looks like the lower wall the other side. So, and then what's nice is that you can now go for this one, because we will have the wall type CP1 along the perimeter. It kind of goes down to the floor. These are where these doors are to the mechanical room and also for that dog run. And so if we, so everything looks good there. I'm going to say base train, and then up to level 2, we should be able to core face of exterior. So there again, if I get my